let's start by creating the layout of our application from within a new folder, which we could name sections. Inside that folder, create a header.js file, which is going to be the React component for the application's header. So create a functional component and render a header tag and a div tag to wrap the content of our header component. For now, the only thing we'd like to render inside our header is the logo of our application. Let's actually create this logo by combining a simple SVG icon and some text. For the icon, go back to your terminal and install heroicons/React. This package is a library from the creators of Tailwind CSS that export beautiful SVG icons as React components. Next, let's import the terminal icon from heroicons/React/outline, which is going to be part of our logo. Now, add a p element to your JSX to wrap the terminal icon and a span element with some text. Then, we can style our elements using Tailwind CSS utility classes. On the p tag, we add flex and item center to center the icon with the text horizontally on the same row. We add a bit of spacing between them with space x1, and we change the text color with text blue 600. Next, we set the width and height of the icon, and we make sure it does not shrink using flex shrink 0. Then, we make our text bold, set the font size with text LG, the letter spacing with tracking tight, and set the white space property to no wrap. Now we can style the div element to contain our logo, set the margin with MX Auto, and add some padding as well. Finally, add a thin border at the bottom of the header. And don't forget to export your components. Alright, let's move on and create the footer of our application inside its own file. Again, start by creating a functional component and returning a footer element. Inside that footer, I'm just going to render the current year and some basic copyright text. And then, styling the text by centering it, changing the font size to small, and the color to gray 500. I'm also adding some padding to the footer tag, and a large margin on top to separate it from the main content of the page. Finally, export your components. As you can see, this is a pretty simple footer element, so feel free to add more content to it if you need to. Now that we have our header and our footer, let's use them to compose the actual layout of our application. Create a new file named layout.js and import the header and the footer at the top. Next, as usual, create a React functional component and render the header and footer components inside a div tag. Then, between those two elements, add a main tag, which is going to contain the main content of our app through the children props. That's it for the layout. Now let's add the styles to it, starting from the div tag, and setting its minimum height to 100% of the viewport, and using flexbox to align its children inside the same column. Next, we'll make the main part grow as much as possible inside the page using flexgrow, and using the container class to set its width across multiple screen sizes, along with MX Auto to center it horizontally and some padding as well. We are now done with our layout component. Let's export it from this file. Before going further with building the pages of our application, let's add a few global styles from the global CSS file. From there, we can use the base layer directive to add style to the body tag and use apply to add utility classes from Tailwind CSS to change the background color and the text color. Let's also change the minimum height of this element to 100% of the viewport. Finally, I always like to style the selection selector to set a custom color on selecting text in my app. Alright, let's save this file and go to the index.js file inside the pages folder to create the home page of our application. At the top, import the layout component from the section folder. Then add the layout component to the JSX and create the hero section of our app with a section element. Inside that section, we are going to add the headlines and a call to action button. Let's start with the headlines by returning a h1 and the h2 tags, style with Tailwind CSS utility classes to make the titles big and bold. Next, let's create a button. Forget about the onClick event for now, and style it with Tailwind to create a nice blue and rounded button. Finally, let's use flexbox on the section tag to center everything inside that section and adding some spacing between the elements and on top of the section. Now, if we save the file and look at this page, we can see all the elements and components we have created render on the screen. We have our logo in the header, we have the footer, and we have the arrow section with the titles and the big blue button. Before moving on, let's go back to our editor and refactor the header component and extract the logo into its own file. So we are going to create the logo component inside a new folder named Components and copy-paste the JS6 from the header to our new component, along with the import statement for the icon. Then we can use the link component from Next.js to wrap our logo inside the link and change the p tag to a head tag. This link component is used to enable client-side transition between routes in our Next.js application. In our case, we want to redirect the user to the home page when the user clicks onto the logo. Now, we can import our new logo component into our header and render it. As you can see, we got the same visual results as before. But if I hover the mouse over the logo, we can see that it is a link pointing to the home page of our application.